All right, so today we are going to start Unit 2, and Unit 2 essentially asks us to look into a software called Kodu, and we're going to start very, very basic game design today. So our goal by the end of Lesson 1, which is where you're at today, is that inside of the Kodu software, you can make an object move, make objects interact with each other, and then track the settings of an object or the characteristics of an object that is inside of Kodu. So that's our goal by the end of this lesson. Couple of things just to give you a little introduction on Kodu itself. Kodu is what is called an object-oriented programming language. And essentially what that means is that you are individually program every single object that you use inside of Kodu. So the reason we focus so heavily on the objects of games in Unit 1 is because game design really is the programming of objects, and you're programming objects to respond to various types of input and various situations. So for example, in Kodu, you'll be able to program an object called a Kodu that can move, that can shoot, that can eat apples, that you can change the speed of. You're programming that object to respond to different types of input, but you can also program rovers, you can also program stars, you can also program a wide variety of objects. And game design really is centered around the idea of programming objects. So that is what we will be focusing on in this first lesson, really hitting hard into that you are programming an object in Kodu. That's what we are doing when we are in game design. We are programming objects. We're programming every object from an apple to a Kodu to a rover, anything that has actions that it needs to do or characteristics that will be changed is programmed as an object inside of game design. So that's the first thing you need to know about Kodu is it is object oriented. Second, Kodu is three-dimensional, so you will be able to create three-dimensional games inside of Kodu, which I think is kind of a cool little addition. Thirdly, you'll need to realize that Kodu is minimal typing of coding. So it's very, very visual, and once we get inside, you'll see that as you program objects, you're really using plus signs to concatenate instructions together. So you'll click one thing and you'll choose an input, then you'll choose which key, and you'll use plus signs to do so. It's very similar to Scratch and putting blocks together, but this is even more visual and more basic because you can only choose the instructions that are attached to that plus sign. And you'll see what I mean in a second, but there is no typing coding inside of Kodu. Thirdly, it is somewhat limited. So we are limited to the instructions that Kodu has built in. And as a result, that sometimes this frustrates some students, we only have options of what Kodu has. So keep that in mind. So for example, what I mean by this is when you program Kodus and rovers, you will see that Kodus are able to eat apples, but rovers are not. That's just the way Kodu is built. Or you'll notice that maybe you want to make something happen, but Kodu doesn't have an instruction for that. So you will be a little bit limited. You can create some awesome games, but at the same time, it doesn't have everything. So keep that in mind. And finally, Kodu runs on a game loop. And what that means is that the code essentially seems to rerun over and over and over. And there is a built-in clock inside of Kodu where it will rerun the code every so often. And it's at a very, very, very quick speed. So the code runs essentially over and over and over and over and over. And what it is doing is it is checking for changes in the game. And then your objects respond to those changes. So that's a little bit different than programming you may have done before. It does not run one time through your program and loop when appropriate and have conditionals when appropriate. It reruns your code to respond to instruction. So keep that in mind as we move forward, that we're writing code that's going to run many, 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 many times. So we have to write it purposefully so that it responds when the objects respond when we would like them to. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get started in Kodu now. So on your computer, it will be inside of the computer science folder. So you'll want to click there. On mine, it's actually off on my desktop. So you'll want to click on the computer science folder, and then you will see these two icons inside of the computer science folder. One is green and one is gray. And you'll notice one says Kodu Game Lab and one is in gray and says configure. You want to click on the green one that says Kodu Game Lab. So if we get started and double click, it should start up. And the first time that you run this, what you will notice is that it will play this video.
Whatever you want it to be.
So you'll go through and you will...
You start with what you want the game to be about.
You can
and you will
create the
actually
full game itself.
Watch this
You
video,
can see the art behind video games.
see what kids have created in the past.
Kids are learning how to program and make video games.
actually making something instead of just playing it.
I'm loving it.
All right, and then you will get to this screen right here. You may have a blue screen where it says click anywhere to continue. You can just click anywhere to continue, and then you will see a wide variety of options here. So a new world, as kind of pretty straightforward, will create a brand new world, and that is what you'll want to click on in just a second. That's what we'll click on today. If you've created games in the past, you'll click on load world, and you can see games that I've either opened or made in the past. They're all right here, so those are my worlds. I can see those there. Right now you won't have any of those. If I click escape, I will go right back to this main screen, so you use your keyboard clicking escape to help you out. But really, those are the two most important instructions there. You can access the community, you can change your options, you can get help. But we're gonna start today by clicking on New World. And what you will notice when you click on New World is you're brought to a very blank screen with essentially one block of grass on it. And right here down at the bottom, you will see that you have a hand tool. And that hand tool allows you to grab and move the screen around. Now, a couple of words of advice, don't get too crazy moving it around, because sometimes your Kodu environment can kind of back out too much or go in too close and fly off the screen. So be careful. Next, what I'd like you to do is very slowly with the turn wheel that's in the middle of your mouse, that scroll wheel. If you scroll in and out, what you will notice is that you are able to scroll very close or further out, which essentially allows you to make a larger world in Kodu. So a little bit to notice about having that hand tool. You can grab and move as well as scroll in and out. Now, if you look along this bottom toolbar, you're going to see a variety of options. First, if you click on that home button, it will actually take you back to the main home screen that we started with. So that will take you back to where it said New World and Low World. The play button here is where you will actually play your game once you started creating. So that's the play button you'll select. Then you have the hand tool here, and this hand tool allows you to move around the screen as you saw. Then you have the object tool, and that will be a tool that you will use heavily. That is how we actually add objects to the screen. That's how we will add Kodus, how we will add rovers and apples and all the terrain and everything like that. We then have a bunch of other tools down here as well that I will get into in later videos, but you have a path tool, you have multiple terrain tools to alter the terrain, a water tool, you can change the shapes, and then you have your characteristics tool. So this is the very basic environment of Kodu, and what you will notice as you hover over these various things in the menu bar down below is if you look up in the upper left-hand corner, it gives you some instructions. So you can drag the terrain, you can orbit the camera, you can find your next character by using tab. If you hover over the object button, it again gives you instructions on what you can do now that you have the object button selected. So it tells you what you can do with that object selected by using extra keys on the keyboard or on the mouse. So keep that in mind. Kodu does communicate a lot in that upper left-hand corner, giving you additional instructions. So this is your basic intro video to what the Kodu environment looks like. In the next video, we're actually going to make our first game. So hopefully you have a good idea of what that Kodu environment looks like, and we'll jump into our next game in the next video.